Hello, listeners. Welcome to The Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. I'm Bela and Mike.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Today, we're excited to be joined by David J. He is the founder and CEO of Warm Welcome. This is a company that uses video to customize an initial customer experience to go beyond generic emails. David is a serial entrepreneur, having also founded Agree.com.
Bela, this sounds great. I mean, you know that I love technology, and things like video and customization and creating value for customers are all things that kind of get the hair in the back of my neck standing up. So let's jump right into the interview.
Hello, listeners. Today, I'm with David J., who is the founder and CEO of Warm Welcome. Warm Welcome helps businesses upgrade from the boring text to how they typically interact with their customers to personal videos so that they can have meaningful relationships that hopefully drive real revenue. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about where the idea for this came from. You know, were you in the shower one day and you said Eureka? Or how did that evolve?
No, it didn't come from the shower, although a lot of good ideas do. I was actually building some other video technology to auto-create slideshows and videos and things like that. And a friend of mine, Eric Knopf, came by, and he has a company called WebConnects. And he saw that technology and said, gosh, I'd love to use that as a way to send personal videos to every single one of our customers. You know, as they sign up, I want to greet them, welcome them, walk them around the office, show them their account manager, and have a really personal first experience with these people, similar to what you'd have in a store. But I want to be able to do that for my SaaS company.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're really talking about here is sort of having a much richer engagement with the customer, right? Sort of moving from sending them an email that says, welcome to my company as a customer, to sending them a video about the business. Did I get that right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You know, when we see someone's face and we see their smile and they say our name and they greet us like a human being instead of, you know, a robot, it changes everything. And, you know, our customers want to have relationships with us just the same way as, you know, I think a lot of businesses want to have relationships with their customers. It makes business, it makes life richer, like you said, when there's a relationship connected to it and not simply revenue.
Yeah. So if I think about myself as a business owner, and let's say you knock on my door and say, hey, Bela, I'd like to introduce you to this new technology. It's Warm Welcome is the name of our company. Take me through sort of, the 5-minute conversation we would have about the business and why it's important to me to have this in my business.
Sure. Well, the first thing that any business needs to do is build trust. You know, they might have a prospect or a lead, but the lead needs to trust the salesperson or the business owner, trust that they're going to kind of fulfill the promise of whatever it is that they're selling. And one of the main things that we've used to build trust over, really forever is looking in people's eyes, right? When we can look in each other's eyes, we can determine for ourselves whether or not the person across from us is telling the truth, whether they're a safe person, whether they're someone that we want to interact with or have a relationship with. When you take that out of the equation, you're really hamstrung, right? You're disadvantaged because you lose that ability to build trust quickly, right? Everyone can write a nice email. Everyone can get a fake written testimonial for their business. But when you have something on video, it changes everything. And so, nowadays especially, people are looking for ways to stand out. Almost every market seems crowded now. And so simply by switching from sending all these text emails or putting text and graphics on your website, switching all that to video, personal video especially, immediately separates you from probably most of the people in your market.
Yeah. So I've been around long enough to sort of remember in the old days when you sent a correspondence to a customer, whether it be welcome or informing them about a sale or something like that, you had to enter their name into the software for each
Right.
letter. And then someone figured out, well, we could make that a variable, and then we can read it off the database. And now all of a sudden, typing one letter was as easy as typing 1,000 letters. So are we there with the video technology that we can have that same type of ability? Or do I need to make, 1,000 different videos, if you will, to sort of welcome my customers?
Sure. Yeah. So there's things that we can automate. There's lots you can do with video nowadays to make it very efficient. And so there's two ways to personalize things. One is to personalize every message that you send, and we certainly do that for all of our new customers. We grab a whiteboard or piece of paper, we write their name on it, we show them like, hey, we're genuinely talking to you. We're not faking anything here, and they appreciate that. The other way to personalize something is by changing the medium that you're delivering the content in to be a more personal medium, even if you're sending out a mass, broadcast email. So, for example, like you brought up, if you're sending an email to 1,000 people, well, that's okay and that's good. If it's all text and graphics and there's nothing personal in it, there's no human behind it, there's no face for them to interact with, it's less personal, it's going to build less trust. It's not going to be as effective of an email campaign. So you can personalize things individually, and you can make things more personal and still do broadcast messaging.
Yeah, very nice. And so if we were to, if I said, okay, great, I'm sold, I'd like to sign up for this, sort of take me through the process that we would undertake.
Yeah, so we want to personalize every touch point of the customer experience. And we started with video email. There's a lot of video email providers out there nowadays. But the problem is if you just do video email and some of your communication comes in that way, and then you still have some of these older types of communication technologies, then it's convoluted for the customer. And so we wanted to create something where no matter what way they're engaging with you, whether it's through your website, even through a video business card, through your email signature, through a video email, no matter where they're at in the customer journey, they're going to interact with you in the same personal way. And so we encourage people to start with a video business card, and you can make one of those for free. They're wonderful because you can update them, right? If you get a new position or you change something about your business, you can just go in, type something, update it, and you're done. If you have, paper business cards and something changes, you got to order new ones or get new designs. And we all know that most business cards just end up in the trash. But a video business card can be shared around. It can be multiplied. You can give it to one person and they can send it on to 10 other people and refer you that way. But yeah, we encourage people to start there and then kind of go down the road. Add a video bubble to your website. Almost every business over the course of the last year has had to transition to selling online. Well, they've transitioned to selling online or offering something for sale online, but they haven't improved the experience of buying something online, right? And the great example here is Apple. Imagine for a minute that you were to walk into an Apple store and there was nobody there. It was just the products, right? You'd have a much different experience than when you walk in the front door. The first thing that you see is somebody there welcoming you, giving you a warm welcome, they actually call it that, and offering to help. That's what they do. They have someone greeting you there, a human. Well, every website should have the same thing. They should have somebody waving, smiling, saying, hey, I'm here to help. I'm not going to bother you, but if there's anything that I can help with, just let me know. And the fact of the matter is most websites don't. Most websites are beautifully designed and they have all this carefully crafted text, but there's no people. And the people are what build the trust. So that's what we're trying to do, is bring people and humans back into the equation here, because that's really the differentiator that people should take advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like websites are starting to incorporate the ability to text message some live person someplace and ask a question about a product or a service or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so what you're talking about is sort of taking this to the next level, so that I would actually engage on a video call or Skype call or whatever with that person. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to have both live video. So, you've got those little chat bots and things like that people put on their website. And we can do that. You can send text back and forth if that's what you prefer. But there's a lot of situations where video is much better and even more efficient.
Oh, way more efficient. Way more efficient. I'm not a fast typer, so I hate those little text boxes.
Yeah, everyone's starting to hate those. These chat bots, it's like they're not that helpful. Like, just give me a person. And trying to explain a lot of products or services with text just doesn't do it. When I can click on a video or even just send you a recorded video back and show you the product, show you, the answer to your question, it's better for everybody. There's not so much back and forth. You can solve things right there on the spot.
Yeah. So does your service, I have the option of texting, doing just audio, or doing a combined video audio?
Yeah, that's right. Any of the three.
Oh, wow. Very nice. And so is there like a sweet spot for a company who should use this? In other words, is it, a large company, a small company, consumer products? Is there a place where people should, or is there a sector? Let me try to ask the question more succinctly. Is there a sector where this is taking off, where people are really adopting it?
Yeah, it's going across just about everything. I think we're on to a much bigger shift in the way humans communicate. And it's not been, just spurred from COVID and everyone working from home. It's much bigger than that, right? 600 years ago, the printing press came out. And ever since then, we've been obsessed with written communication because it was one of the first and only things in the world that scaled. And we're, a culture obsessed with things that scale. Well, in the last 20 years, you have the internet and speeds getting faster. Nowadays, you have every single person carrying around a video camera with them all the time. And so what we're finding is that communicating through video is just a much better way for humans to communicate than communicating through text. We treat each other better. There's more nuance. There's more understanding. With text, people tend to read it in kind of an angry state. They tend to write more aggressively than they would speak, and we've all seen that on Facebook and Twitter, which have just turned into these, more or less fights. Like, it's just this public brawl where everyone's angry at everybody. And when you switch it to video, people can disagree, but still be civil. And so it's going to move through every type of business. Small businesses are adopting it because they can adopt it quickly, but sales teams, marketing teams, all the way down to leaders of companies using this as a way to cast vision through their company. It's a much better way to cast vision and set the track than to send out a, email that people are probably not even going to read.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I'm thinking about this in terms of it takes some. Well, first of all, I think one of the nice things about the video messaging back and forth is that when you see somebody, there's a little more accountability, right? There's more civility, just as you were saying. It's not as anonymous as sort of Twitter is, even though your coded name may be there, but it's still pretty anonymous. So we have more accountability. I think we do tend to be civil, and that's certainly a great direction to be moving in. But at the same time, I think part of the challenge, at least I think about it, is it takes some skill to be able to communicate succinctly in a video, because when I'm typing an email, sometimes I type a sentence 5 times before I get it to where I want it. Doing a video is a little bit more challenging to do that efficiently and effectively. How do you address that?
Yeah, it's something that we're certainly having to learn, but it isn't. It's a change in really how people believe something's authentic and something's real, right?
Okay, good point.
Where we used to think like, oh, this is perfect and polished, I trust that. Nowadays, we don't trust things that are too perfect and too polished. We trust things that are more personal, that are more real, that are more genuine. And so the little errors in our communication or stutters, things like that, are actual advantages.
Yeah.
And they're finding this in music. I was on a podcast just a week or two ago from a guy who he teaches music and he publishes music and he's in some big band. But he said that now with auto tuning and all these professional tools, they can do a recording and make it sound perfect. They can even do that while they're out on tour. But what they're finding is that the people actually don't like that. They want the authenticity. They want the realness that comes from a genuine performance. And so it's the same thing with our communication. If you're sitting down at a coffee shop talking to somebody about your product or service, it would feel weird if you just had all these talking points and you just delivered this script, right? And so the more we can transition away from the perfect, polished, overly produced video and move towards a personal video, I think the better for business, the better for relationships, the more we can just be ourselves and focus on helping our clients.
Yeah, excellent point. So I guess I shouldn't feel as so bad about my stumbling over words and stuff.
No, not at all. No.
Yeah. So how long, let's talk a little bit more about the business. How long has Warm Welcome been around? When did you guys start it?
So it was started as kind of just a test side project. One of my other companies that I started in 2014, it's called Agree.com, took about $1 million to build that product. And now, or five years later in 2019, I wanted to see how quickly and efficiently I could build an MVP and get it to market. Not a complete product, not a finished product, but something that I could get feedback on. And we did it in 1 month and $10,000. And that's the difference. Just 5 years makes in technology. Things are getting so much cheaper, so much more efficient, so much quicker to produce. And so that's when it started in 2019. We got an MVP up. We started to explore. We started to get feedback on it. That's super important. And then from that feedback, we started to round it out into the complete product that is not at all finished. We have a lot more we're going to develop, but is suitable for the market to adopt it.
Yeah. And by MVP, you mean minimum viable product.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Excellent concept. One that I'm a big believer in for sure.
Yeah.
So did you guys raise capital for this, or are you self-funded?
Self-funded. Yeah. I've never raised money. We were considering it. It's a really hot space right now. And, there's going to be a lot of iterations and people doing different pieces of it, similarly to the written word, right? Like we've got little notebooks like this. We have leather-bound notebooks. We have text messages. We have a million different varieties of consuming or delivering the written word. We're going to have the same with video.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we may raise money, but right now it's all organic, and we're still young and kind of figuring things out. But maybe later this year, early next year, we'll do that.
Yeah, very good. So let's take a step back to David as a young lad. Where did you grow up? Were you entrepreneurial when you were young? Where'd you go to school? Give me a little bit more kind of background, if you will.
Yeah, I grew up just in the suburbs of Phoenix, Chandler, Arizona. Enjoyed playing soccer, but yeah, was definitely entrepreneurial. Some of the kind of funny stories when I was in grade school, I was sitting there in class one day, and our school would kind of let students go around and sell candy bars, and it would raise money for the PTA or something. And they were, $2 per candy bar, and in my opinion, the candy bars sucked. Like they were this dark chocolate. Like no kids like this stuff, but the kids are all going around selling it. So I would go down to the supermarket every Friday because they would have a deal where you get 4 candy bars for $1, and I'd buy 4 packs of king size Reese's Pieces. So I essentially got 16 Reese's peanut butter cups, 4 king size bars for $1, and then I'd sell them for $1 a piece. So I'd sell them for half price of what these other, crappy school candy bars were. And for me, it was, $1. I was getting those things for a quarter. So it was pretty good money. But it only lasted for a couple of weeks. School shut me down. I was cutting into their their profits.
Right.
So
Right. They want a monopoly, right? They want a monopoly.
Exactly. Typical government run stuff,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
So did you go to university and,
yeah, I did. I went to Westmont College in Santa Barbara. Went there for 3.5 years, dropped out, and started working. I didn't graduate,
yeah.
but I started building companies actually while I was there, and that's what I think is so important for students nowadays. Is if you're even going to go to college, go and start a company on day one, because you give yourself such a huge advantage. Typically your college years, you're maybe borrowing some money or whatnot. Hopefully you're not actually.
Right.
I think that's a terrible thing these days, kids coming out of school with tons of debt. But if you do go to school, start a business, start working right away. I was going to school, and I was playing soccer. So my time was really limited, but instead of going out and partying every night, I just maybe party one night a week, and I'd work the other nights. I'd
Yeah.
stay up doing something, building something.
Sure. So when you left college, did you go work for somebody else, or did you have your own business that you were running?
I really couldn't go work for somebody else, without a degree at that time. It was still, it was 20 years ago. It was still very heavily weighted towards people with degrees. And so I could have went out and got a job at a coffee shop or something like that. But no, I started a photography business and a video business. And then that grew into building online communities. And through those communities is where I started, selling software into those, and had a business partner at the time, and he'd create the software. I'd do the sales and marketing through online communities. And anyway, we split and parted ways, and now I can kind of do the whole thing with a fractional group. So our company's it's all fractional. People are working remote. We've been doing that for years. But yeah, they can move around onto different projects, and it's just a really free way to live and work.
Yeah, it's amazing how sort of the work environment is changing, and I think this experience with COVID sort of has accelerated certain aspects of that. But it'll never be the same. I think the working environment for people is changed forever, and in many ways, I think in a good way, right? I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah,
of what's going on.
Yeah, there's definitely some good things about it. I think long term we need to get back around people. I believe people need people. When we're around people living in relationship, it's better. And in the U.S., especially, business has been the main driver for that, right? For people to interact with one another.
That's right.
And so if business isn't going to be that driver, we need to have something else that's pulling people, into relationship with one another.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this ability to have a richer engagement, whether it be in business or whether it be at a friends level, and in many ways, 30, 40 years ago, your circle of friends was fundamentally limited by distance.
Yeah.
And that's no longer true. So all of a sudden the world has gotten flatter and that, from many aspects, and this ability to have meaningful relationships and engagements with people on the other side of the world, which was much more challenging and difficult 20 years ago. So, and I think what you're developing here really plays into that, whether it be used, for businesses, for holding on to customers, but this same type of rich environment is important in many aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So let me ask you one last question, then we'll wrap this up. What's next? What if you look into your crystal ball, and I'm not talking about 10 years from now, but in the next 2 years, how do you see this kind of evolving?
Yeah, well, right now, for me personally, we're in the process of moving from Oregon to Florida, and so that's a big move, about as far as you can go in the U.S. And so that's big. I have 2 young boys, so the next few years for me is going to be largely devoted to creating things in the physical world. Like maybe we flip a ranch, or we build some sort of community center or something like that that we can kind of have as a business, but I can do with my family. I've been in tech for 20 years, and it's tough to bring a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old, into a podcast or a meeting, a Zoom meeting, but you can go and build something with them and teach them the value of work, and teach them, that work is a wonderful gift that we get to do. We don't have to do it. We get to do it. And, I think there's a generation out there now, that is largely lived in a very affluent society and doesn't quite have the skills needed to go out and really want to work and value work. And we're seeing the kind of repercussions of that. And so I want to make sure that my boys value that, and know that they're going to work hard their entire life, and that's a great thing that they get to do. But I've got to be able to model that for them, by not just sitting in an office, but by doing work with them.
Yeah, very nice. Well said. Well said. So, David, you've been a great guest. I've really enjoyed our conversation. This is fascinating, and I think you're really on the forefront of what's coming in the future, right? This ability to communicate across platforms in a very rich way, almost like being there. And so I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks, Bella. Appreciate it.
Bela, great interview. I mean, what an interesting story and an interesting business, and kind of a cool example of a serial entrepreneur that's done things in a really unique way. What struck you most about your conversation with David?
Yeah, there was a couple things that really hit home with me. One is this notion that I think sometimes businesses forget, and that's their customers. And customers are key. And as you and I have said many times, it costs a lot less money to keep an existing customer than it does to acquire a new customer. And I think sometimes businesses lose sight of that. They get so enamored with finding new customers, they tend to ignore their existing customers. And I think so that's sort of one thing that I think is a fundamental concept that we need to make sure we're focused on. I think the other thing that is important here is, particularly given with COVID, I think COVID has really sort of amplified this challenge. And that is, it's getting more and more difficult to interact with customers. As we do more and more sales over the web and online sales, as restaurants do more takeout business, all of our interactions that are traditional, where the customer walks into your retail store and you engage with the customer walks into your restaurant and you engage with the customer, that is shifting. And there's less of that, and there's more non-personal interactions. It's more transaction-based. That's just sort of what's going on. And I think the COVID thing has really amplified that. So how do you now engage with customers? How do you build that relationship? And if you think about it, video these days is everywhere. People are making videos all the time. You see them on Facebook. They're interacting with their friends via videos. So why not have businesses interact the same way? So those were the three things that sort of resonated with me. And how about you, Mike? What sort of struck you?
Agreed. And your point about building customer relationships and having that accelerated by COVID is true, but this is a problem that existed pre-COVID. That is, more and more of attention goes to digital and online. The face-to-face interactions that we used to have, even before COVID, were shrinking, right? Less and less. We were doing more e-commerce, more mobile commerce, learning online, all of these things. This accelerated during COVID, but these problems are way before COVID, and they're going to go on way after COVID. So I think it's just an accelerator, like you said, and I think that's a really important point. That said, the fact that these problems existed, these gaps, I think there's really a need for creative solutions on how to connect companies with their customers. And I'm not sure this is exactly the right way to do it. I'm not that smart, but I love the idea that they're trying. And one of these ideas is going to work. I mean, kind of an interesting side note, Sandy and I ordered some wine for some of our friends, Lizzie and Alex, who got married over a year ago, and we were kind of late on the present. You know how that goes because of COVID, right? So we said, okay, let's just order something, right? We wanted to give them something in person when we went to visit them in their new home, blah, blah, blah. So we ordered them some wine, and the wine got delivered, and the next day, both emails were on the email from the wine company. So we did, and the people who got the gift got an email and said, we hope you got your order. Please let us know if there are any problems. And by the way, one of the winemakers who made this bottle that you ordered 3 of, right, wanted you to watch a video. And it wasn't personalized, like they said, hello, Sandy, right, blah, blah, blah. But it was, a winemaker said, hey, thanks for ordering my wine. I'm so-and-so. I think they were in Italy. And I was like, this is our grapes. This is how we make wine. We just wanted to show you what we do and the care that we put into this wine, and hope that you can get a sense when you taste the wine of this is where the wine came from. Really cool, right? I mean, if it would have been personalized, it would have been even cooler, right? But it was that idea that, okay, we didn't just buy a bottle of wine and have it delivered. We made at least a one-way connection with the people that made the wine. Okay. Yeah, and I realize you might not want to do this with a pair of socks that you buy or something like that, or a bag of carrots, right? But there are probably some things where this is a really good fit. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you went to the corner store in the old days and you bought a bag of carrots, there was that personal touch, right? You talked to the grocer, you engaged with them a little bit.
Or the wine store.
Yeah. Any of those, right? It's all about this engagement and interactions. And that's sort of what builds trust. That's sort of what builds that relationship. You got to figure out how to engage with the customer, how to get some interaction between you and your customers. And I don't know about you, Mike, but for me, when I trust a business or a company, I'm a customer for life. And let me relate a story to you, right? So there's a local car dealer here. We've lived here in upstate New York now for 25 years. We moved here from California, back to the East Coast from California. And I have bought, I think, 7 cars from this car dealership. And the first car I bought, it was just like any other car dealership. I went in there, but there was something different about this car dealership. I don't know what it was. I never felt like I was getting ripped off. I may have been getting ripped off, but I never felt that way. I shouldn't say ripped off. It's the wrong terminology. I may not have been getting the best deal, but I always felt like I was getting a reasonable deal. I never felt hustled. I never felt sort of, the whole buying process of I got to go talk to the manager back and forth and dickering and all that stuff. I always felt good, and including service. The service manager did a great job. I always felt like I was well taken care of on a reasonable price. Recently, the owner of that car dealership sold the dealership. Somebody else bought it. And this past November, that happened last summer. This past November, went and bought a new car from the new dealership. The trust was gone. right? The experience was totally different. And now to me, it felt just like walking into, I don't want to generalize, but like most dealerships where it's about numbers, it's about hustling you through there. It's about, here's our price. What do I need to do to get you into this car today? and it's just a very different buying experience. Now, for some people that may work great, but for me, I preferred that other type of an experience. And I think we have to figure out, how do we build the relationships and the experiences that our customers want? Because certain types of, the way you build your business is sort of the what you vibrate out is going to attract a certain type of customers. And think about the types of customers you want, right? Do you want customers that are just interested in a transaction, in and out, really fast, really quick, boom, and you may or may not see them again? Or are you interested in people who are going to be lifelong customers? And I think that's different from business to business, and you as a business owner sort of need to decide. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. One is just better than the other for certain types of customers that you're going to attract. So how do you see companies building trust, Mike?
Well, as you kind of implied, trust is generally by definition built by having a pattern of repeated kind of experiences, right, over time, that either the company served your needs, or you felt like the company cared about you, you got the product you wanted quickly, whatever it is on the dimension that was important to you, they met that, and they met it over repeated times. And then you trust that no matter how many times you go in, no matter what happens, they'll come through for you. And even there's a lot of research that shows, okay, if you have one bad experience but 10 good experiences, a customer will be like, no problem, I understand, I'll come back, it was a bad day. Yeah, and that's the kind of resilience or stickiness that you want. Now, that said, you made a really interesting point. And, the word custom is part of customer for a reason. And that is what you said is exactly true. I had kind of a front row seat into the auto retail business for a while in my life. And I can tell you that customers like you and I am the same way. We're like, okay, I don't necessarily need the lowest price, right? I want a fair price. I want to be treated really well, right? I want it to be easy. Right? And if there's an issue, I want you to fix it quickly. And I'm not so concerned about saving a couple $100. Some people are, and I get it, right? And I understand that. And I learned that the hard way. I am not a typical customer. Right? There are other people that they'll drive an hour, they'll spend $75. So some of the people, they just don't have the money. Okay. Some people just want a good deal. They'll drive an hour and spend $25 in gas to save $20, right? Because it's kind of like the thrill of the chase. I want to know that I got the best deal, and I'm willing to actually invest a little bit to do that, which to me is fascinating, right? And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying there are different types of customers. And I think successful businesses can figure out quickly what type of person you are, right? And then meet those needs. So you have to build trust. First, you have to know correctly what type of customer you are. What's gonna make you happy and keep you coming back. And then, so that's the first step in trust, right? Because that gives you the second opportunity, right? If you don't meet that threshold, there will never be a second opportunity. And then you have to remember that, either using technology or in your own head, right? And provide that same experience again and again, right? And only then can you build trust. So I really think it's a two-part thing. It's the custom part, understanding what your needs are and deliver it, right? Even a mass market retailer needs to kind of do that, right? They need to have certain brands that are low price, because I have a very tight budget, but they also need to have some higher end stuff, right? To meet the needs of the people who want something a little nicer. So even a Target or a Walmart, right, are actually kind of providing a range of experiences for different types of customers. Even having an express checkout or self-checkout. Some people love the self-checkout, right? Some people hate it. They won't go anywhere near it. You got to have both, right? Okay? Yeah. Some people buy big carts overflowing full of stuff. You have regular lines. Some people are just going to come in and get 3 items. You need to have an express lane, right? So you need to understand who your customers are and then adjust what you offer them in order to win their business the first time, and then doing it consistently is it. So I love this idea of trust. I think it's really important. And at the end of the day, it's so hard to build trust and so easy to lose it. Yeah. Like you said, with your experience at the car dealer, right? One big change. Now, if the dealer hadn't sold, right, and you went in and you had one bad experience, right, last time, you probably would go back the next time thinking, okay, it's still the same ownership, right? It's just a blip. But the fact that that it changed hands, right? And then you had the bad experience, they lost the trust.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I'm not picking on car dealers, but you go spend $30,000, or I can relate it to the other part of my life where I have a boat and I keep it at a marina, and between everything I do there, I probably spend $12,000 a year there. Mm-hmm. And the marina I'm at, on a relative basis to other marinas, has good customer service. But in the absolute scale of like going to Disney World, the customer service is awful. Mm-hmm. Right? I can go on a Disney, and we did when the kids were young. We went on a Disney World vacation, right? We spent $12,000 and we felt like kings. Mm-hmm. Everything was like really well done. We felt really, customer service was impeccable. And here I am spending $35,000 on a car, and I feel like I'm getting hustled around. Or I'm spending $12,000 at the marina, and again, on the relative scale, compared to other marinas, the customer service is pretty good. But compared in the absolute scale, it's mediocre at best.
Yeah, this was the premise on which we started this business, my two co-founders and I, was that, look, for most people, the car is the second largest expenditure that they'll lay out in their life, right, after their house. And for some people who rent a house, buying a car might be the single most expensive purchase that they make, right? Why does everybody hate going to the car dealer, right? That was our basic premise, that people want better. And I'll tell you, we were wrong about a lot of that, Bela. And I can't tell you on how many points that you and I think, it should be a great experience. And other people are like, no, I want the cheapest price, period.
Right.
Right. You and I are not typical. But this is why there's these stratified brands, right? You go to a Lexus dealer or you go to a BMW dealer and you get it treated than when you go to a lower priced brand, because the needs are different. One size doesn't fit all, right?
Yeah,
and
true.
that's kind of the thing that's really important. So, and I don't pretend to understand why customers want what they want, right? My job as a business owner or as a professor is to understand what people want and then help businesses respond to that. Right? I don't understand. I'm married to a psychologist, but I'm not a psychologist, right? And what drives people to demand certain things in their relationships with businesses or with people, for that matter, is beyond my ability to comprehend. But what I can do is observe very carefully and listen and see, and then say, okay, this is how you need to redefine this process so that you can offer this type of customer this experience consistently.
Yeah. Well,
so that's kind of the goal. But let's, we're getting sidetracked a little bit, but in an interesting path. One of the things that I really liked David, when he was talking about, was his emphasis on MVPs, right? Minimum viable product. And he did it quickly, and it really helped him. And relating MVP with kind of this idea of giving people what they want. Why is an MVP so important?
Well, I think it's the best way to test your product. The first entrepreneurial business I started, we were venture backed, and we made a drastic mistake, and I was part of that mistake, in that we came out with the perfect product, a year and a half into the start of our business, and the first time we displayed that product to a customer was at a trade show. So the product was already designed, the brochures were already printed. And we got the product about 80% right. Unfortunately, that wasn't a percentage sufficient enough to have a successful business. So I'm a firm believer in this notion of getting a level of product out there, interacting with your customers, and getting feedback from customers, not just getting feedback from the product developers and the product developers' friends. You have to get real customers to use your product and engage with you. And if you tell customers that this is a beta product, and you want feedback from them, and you make that engagement genuine, they'll forgive all sorts of things. They'll be very tolerant of the product maybe not working perfectly, or meeting their expectations. And it's actually a way to build that relationship that we're just talking about. So I'm a believer from two perspectives. Number one, it's the best way to get feedback, which is directly from your customers, number one. And number two, it's a great way to start building those relationships with your customers and to really solidify those relationships as you move forward.
Love it. Couldn't agree more, Bela. Let's switch over to the idea of funding. Another thing that I think was really interesting in David's story was that he self-funded, right? And we've talked about this kind of a lot, but he explained really nicely the pros and cons of self-funding. And it's a great model for becoming what we call a serial entrepreneur. And you have this background, and maybe you can tell a little bit about your story, but one business you learn, and I like I said this, you learn, but you also accumulate some capital, right? So now you've got some money and some leverage and some knowledge. You've also built a network, and that led to more entrepreneurial opportunities, right? So kind of, what do you see the points? Is this story typical in your experience, kind of from your VC days and running the incubator days? Do you see this idea that, okay, here's somebody who, their first venture might have done well, might have failed, but this creates these second opportunities, third opportunities. Do you see that this is a natural progression, or is it just some people are kind of serial entrepreneurs and some people are one and done, and that's the end of the story?
Well, I don't know if I can generalize about that. There are certainly lots of examples where folks start a business, it's successful or partially successful, or maybe not successful at all. And from that, like, as you said, they meet people, they engage with people, comes another opportunity. And other people get into the entrepreneurial space and they might find, you know what, this is not for me. This is not the pace that I want. It's not the lifestyle I want. It doesn't meet my, Maslow's higher needs of hierarchy or whatever that stuff was, if I can remember back to that in school. And they move on and they go try something else. But I bet you even then, when they move on and try something else, that entrepreneurial experience gave them a foundation that makes them good at the next thing they're going to do. So I'm a firm believer in sort of building upon experiences and developing it that way. So I just think that's really key. Now on the funding side, here is an interesting kind of dilemma, right? There's some businesses that, because of the business you're in, requires lots of capital. It's gonna take you millions of dollars before you can introduce your very first product. Well, if you can self-fund that, that's wonderful. But oftentimes, many people are not in a position where they can self-fund that, and they have to go raise capital of some sort. Now, the challenge with raising capital is it always has some constraints. You're selling part of your business, more than likely, or even if you're just taking on debt, it gives you some constraints. And so the beauty of being self-funded is that it gives you more options. It gives you more freedom of choice, freedom of action. You can do pivots much easier. You can do all sorts of things that when you have raised capital, you may have to get the okay to do certain things from your investors. Not that that is necessarily a bad thing. Having those investors sitting at your conference room table might be a good thing because they're bringing expertise to the table. They're helping you make the business successful. So there's plus and minuses to this, but it's important to understand what they are. And if you self-fund in the beginning, you can always get capital later on. So that's another thing to remember. So I'm a firm believer in sort of, if you can self-fund, get that minimum viable product out there, get some customer feedback, and then if you need capital, go ahead and go after it. And that capital, with some success under your belt, it'll be easier to raise that capital. It'll be on friendlier terms. So that's sort of my thoughts on that, Mike.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's a really neat way to look at it. So yeah, we covered a lot of ground here. I mean, this is a really interesting startup that he's really trying to build connections with customers in a digital way that matches up with kind of how we interact with companies now. He's doing this at a great time during COVID, right? Where we know that this gap exists kind of there's greater need for it. Great entrepreneurial story about being a serial entrepreneur and self-funding. We talked about cool things like, really taking advantage of minimal viable products, MVPs, and it's just a neat story. And I hope he's really successful with this. And if not, I'm sure he'll learn from it and pivot and do something different because that's been this guy's history. So, Bela, let's wrap it up, huh? I think listeners, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you found this episode interesting and thought-provoking. As always, if you have questions about what we've discussed or suggestions on people we should interview, please get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
And please do follow the podcast if you haven't already. Just hit that follow button in your favorite podcasting application. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you soon, Mike.
Sounds great, Bela. And from over here in Münster, Germany, see you soon.